All right, now let's discuss this further. We're now joined via Zoom by election analyst Wayne Sussman. A pleasure to see you again, sir. Thank you so very much for availing yourself to SABC News.
It's great to be back on your show. Thank you.
Now, Wayne, let's start by talking about the importance really of by-elections in general, but also specifically in this particular year when there is a lot going on politically. I know you're not a political analyst, but rather an election analyst, but it would be interesting just to gauge in terms of the fact that, we have factional battles on one side, we have qualification scandals on the other side, and one wonders if, that has an impact or effect on the by-elections, but more importantly, let's talk about the importance of the by-elections as a whole.
There's definitely a strong relationship, obviously, between politics and elections. Yeah. If your party is going to be divided, if your party is unable to generate enthusiasm amongst its voters and, more importantly, its activists, if your party is going to be disorganized because their minds distracted, they're focusing on other matters, whether it's infighting or factionism or whether qualifications, that's going to detract from the way you approach by-elections or elections. So there's definitely a very strong relationship. And what these by-elections can and might tell us today is how parties are faring on the road to 2021. We know that the ANC were resilient in the last round of by-elections. They picked up a ward off the Democratic Alliance in Knysna, a ward off the IFP in the Lembe district in KwaZulu-Natal. So they would have been pretty happy. Whereas a party like the Democratic Alliance finds itself in a very tough position right now. So these by-elections are going to give us some kind of trends and indications of what voters in 40 wards in 6 of the 9 provinces are thinking today.
Yeah, and I actually want to talk about those patterns. Perhaps we'll be able to analyze that in terms of, how voters tend to vote during this time. I mean, when one speaks of by-elections, and we were just playing a clip now by one of our reporters speaking to community members, community members will generally talk about issues relating to service delivery, because it's also the time when they pick their councillors, and one wonders how voters tend to vote. Is it based on the loyalty that they generally would have, or issues pertaining to service delivery and who they believe would better provide service delivery for them? And perhaps maybe that's what we can talk about at this time in terms of the patterns of how the voters generally vote when it comes to by-elections.
That's a great question, and I must say I really enjoyed seeing voters Namahlati speaking about this by-election, and it just shows the important work your channel does.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Yeah. So when it comes to, let's talk about Mangaung, where there's a lot of service delivery protests right now. I've been tracking by-elections there, and we've had 3 by-elections in the last few months in townships around Mangaung. And the ANC increased its majority, did incredibly well. The EFF really struggled to make inroads in those wards. Yet today in Mangaung, we're seeing a shutdown. So the trends might have suggested late last year that the ANC is insurmountable, that no one can touch them in their strongholds in Mangaung. But if we're going to see new formations, new challenges coming to our cities and to our towns in the next few weeks or months, we might see new parties or new initiatives being formed, and they might challenge the trends we might have seen up until now. So I'm watching 2 particular, and I don't know if the SABC's covered them yet, wards today, and that is Steve Chweti in Middelburg, where there's a new party which has been formed by former ANC leaders in Middelburg and in Mpumalanga. I'm going to see what they're going to do there. And then when it comes to the issue of service delivery, we know that the biggest setback the ANC has had since 2019 was when they lost 10 wards in the Maluti Apofong municipality in Kwakwa in the Free State near the Maluti Mountains. Yeah. And there it was quite categorical that councillors who had left the ANC because of the infighting, who are still respected by community members who are willing to look past the ANC and trust these independents who come from the ANC. So it can, obviously, the brand of the ANC is incredibly strong. But if there are local parties, or if a party like the DA, the EFF, or the Freedom Front or the IFP choose local leaders who are well known in the community, who are popular amongst the electorate in that particular community, they might do better than the way their parties are faring in other regions or other parts of the country.
Wayne, would political parties sort of view the by-elections as a way to kind of test waters for the main elections? And as important as by-elections are, I wonder if some of the bigger political parties maybe downplay it and see it more as a way of testing the ground, tasting the waters, to see what could happen in the main elections that are coming, of course, in this year. But then on the back of that, I also wonder, even if they were to fare badly or see gaps, is it not too little too late? Whatever they would be able to do to turn things around, would it not be too late?
So it's definitely a test run for the elections in October.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that your party is still able to get out voters. You want to make sure that your volunteers are energized and motivated to get voters to the polls, to make the calls, to hand out pamphlets. You want to make sure to see what the communities are thinking of you today compared to 2019's general election and compared to the 2016 local government election. So it is very important. Yes, parties will downplay it. They'll say they're on track. But ultimately, I think this is a very good indicator and trend of how parties are faring. There are examples. I'll give one quickly, and that is Ward 58 in Tshwane, which is Pretoria Central, Pretoria West. The DA came second there in 2016. The EFF came a close third. The ANC got under 50%. The DA has decided not to participate there. Now, it might be due to a loss of support, but they might say, we want to channel our resources to the other wards which we currently control in Tshwane. So yes, you'll see parties picking what by-elections they're going to partake in. I'll give another quick example. The party Good, which obviously most of its support is in the Western Cape, they didn't participate in any by-elections in the April round of by-elections. So they're deciding to conserve their resources and rather use that for the general election. So it's hard for me to say what the Western Cape is thinking of Good right now because they haven't participated in the last two rounds of by-elections.
Yeah. And then I think the last time we spoke, we were chatting quite a bit about independent candidates, although most of our conversation today is really around by-elections. I'd like to know where we are in terms of the independents. I mean, I see someone like Musi Maimane, for example, really campaigning a lot for that. And I suppose there'll be more names as time goes that we'll see that sort of show their heads in terms of, or throwing their hats in terms of what they want to achieve in terms of running as independents. But where are we at this stage? I mean, and also I wonder, are South Africans really ready for those independent candidates when the time does arrive?
Yeah, so the bigger trend we're going to see today is what I touched on earlier, and that is local regional parties which have a strong standing either with the ANC or in the community. That's the one big trend I'm going to watch. But to answer your question directly, there are a few independents on the ballot today. I would look at a place like Emalahleni in a ward in Witbank where the former DA councillor left to Action SA but decided to run for an old ward back as an independent. There's another candidate I'm watching in Ward 3 in Pretoria West to see what she can do in that particular ward. I don't think we'll have great insight into the strength of independence after this round of by-elections, bar for, as I said, that ward in Emalahleni. So, look, I've actually been looking at the data. Independents got 1.5% of the vote in 2016. So that's something which we can measure. Musi Maimane's One South Africa movement against.
Yeah.
Are we going to see 3%, 4% of South Africans decide to get behind independence this time around? It'll be interesting to see. For me, the bigger thing to watch right now, those smaller regional local parties which are very specific, but have strong standing in the community.
All right. It's such a pleasure talking to you, sir. Wayne Sussman, will certainly be watching out for the Steve Tshwete Award, as you mentioned. We'll keep our eyes close on that, and we'll certainly catch up with you at a later stage. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.